All right. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for taking time out of your morning. Why don't we start off with some introductions? And you can see the agenda there in chat. Mary Beth Rogers, could you introduce yourself to folks, please?
Hi, everybody. My name is Mary Beth Rogers. I am a management analyst out at the Social Services Agency, and I am also one of the membership chair people and the membership committee chair people, which is why I like to attend these meetings so I can, get in front of the membership. And then I'm also honored to serve as your executive board secretary. Thank you, Mary.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Mary Snow, IT Manager with TSS Public Safety and Justice, and I'm serving as one of your member at large representatives. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you both. Both have served on your executive board. I certainly appreciate their advocacy. I hope you do as well. We also just so you know, Mary Snow has served on the most recent round of negotiations for the County of Santa Clara, and Mary Beth has been an integral part of that as well, while not on the specific bargaining team, supporting it tirelessly through attendance, organizing, and of course making sure our larders are full with swag. So we're able to make those lobbying sessions in front of the board effective and really memorable. So thanks to you both. You're also TSS is also represented by Jim Piazza, who may come in but is not here at the moment, and is elected as a member at large, serves as a member at large, and is not specifically elected from TSS, but does happen to belong to a TSS code. Okay, so we have a pretty robust agenda here with a lot of topics. As always, feel free to ask questions in the midst of the conversation and as it unfolds. And post comments in chat, please. Normally, our process is that if we have around 50 individuals, then you can unmute. Because it looks like we're passing 1:30 now, it gets a little bit unruly if people unmute. So, we'll start off with a just put it in chat, and then as we pause between agenda items, I'll look at the chat and be responsive. Thank you so much, though. Okay, I already see a question in chat. I will check that at the next moment. So give me a little bit there, and there should be some time at the end for Q&A as well. All right, so the first item is about TSS budget advocacy. So what that means is, as you know, SEMA always advocates for the budget and for individuals keeping their positions. This happened most recently in the last round of budget cuts. While nobody went out the door, certainly some people were dislodged, and that was very unfortunate, especially for our enterprise architect individuals. Um, but here's what I want to highlight for this upcoming round of not negotiations, upcoming round of budget and budget talks and cuts, frankly, that are going to be coming, and how that impacted TSS and what we're on the lookout for to prevent that from happening again. Now, I don't want anyone to leave this meeting and say, hey, I attended the SEMA meeting and Zeb said there were going to be no budget cuts. What I want to highlight is that the way the budget was cut this last time had a double impact that was unanticipated and inappropriate, in my view, to TSS. So I'll talk about that. Um, the way that the budget works is and a lot of you know this, and I welcome additional feedback, is the CEO, Office of Budget Analysis, or OBA, your department executive team, right? Amin and his cabinet, are given targets, 4.5%, 3%, whatever the number is. And then they go and make those cuts and adjustments to the impacted budgetary areas. Now, what happened this most recent cycle is that TSS got its own budget cut, which, the department went and made changes to. But because TSS is an enterprise fund, sometimes called internal service funds, there are slight differences. What happens is you all met your target of what your cut was. And then your client departments turned around and made additional cuts. So you got that double whammy in a way that it just doesn't make sense um, for a department to structure its budget, right? You want to be able to have a predictable cut that you are able to make, and then you realize that that's where that cut is. If you make a 4% cut and then outside of your control, another 5% cut comes, now all of a sudden you're facing a 9% cut when you were only planning for 4%. So that's what we really want to see out of this next budget cycle is that all enterprise internal service funds, FAF is another one, are treated similarly. So there's not going to be this big unforeseen impact to departments like your own that bill out for their services. It also, this is kind of a corollary to that, but I just want to let everyone know that this is something that SEMA is contemplating. Um, there are other departments that probably should be enterprise or internal service funds and aren't. So I'll give you an example. Um, it's sort of rhetorical, right? But why is it that um, HR and labor relations and ESA are not things you subscribe to, right? You pick a menu of services and you could opt out of those services and provide them for yourself if you wanted to. Um, Similarly, county council might be in that role where you could say, okay, well, I want, I don't know what, 5,000 hours of lawyerly advice per year, and that's what I'm willing to pay for. But that's not how those departments are set up. So that raises another meta question, which is how come some departments are structured in a way where they have to sing for their supper, so to speak, and other departments just get to say, this is the bill, give it to me. And I don't have to justify that or bill you. So it's part of a larger conversation that I just want folks, every SEMA member to know we're aware of and are advocating for. The other thing is that does relate to budget advocacy, especially for this upcoming budget, is as many of you know and suggested, I believe it was last site meeting, we have requested from LR and have not gotten it for TSS yet, but for some other areas, we've gotten the executive scope and portfolio. Whenever there are budgetary tough times, I think everyone appreciates that the public points to workers, workers point to managers, managers point to executives, right? And everyone goes on a scramble for where can we trim? And nobody wants to trim themselves, of course, right? And we want to trim where it's wasteful, quite frankly. So the executive scopes and portfolios will be very helpful. As I think we all know, there are some executives that have very limited scopes and very limited portfolios, meaning areas they're responsible for. Now, when that is married with a very limited span of control, that's where you really start to scratch your head and say, well, how come we have this position then? And that comes in many different flavors. And just so everyone here is aware, that could also come in some place that might affect your area, right? If it's like, how come we have an area that's doing X, Y, and Z, and that X, Y, and Z is duplicated by this group, and then this other outside agency does half of that also. That's where streamlining starts to come. So certainly be aware that we are looking at that very vigorously for executive staff and portfolios, and just I mean I don't want anyone to take this as like a threat or anything, but just as a cautionary note, do realize that if your services are duplicated, then that's a place where the county is very likely going to be looking. If the libraries runs a bookmobile and then the Friends of the Library also runs a bookmobile that covers the same area, in a tough budgetary time, you're going to be looking at possibly some kind of cut. I see we have a lot of questions in, so I'm going to turn to that right after this last comment about the budget. Another thing that we're paying very close attention to about the budget. Oh, wonderful. We just passed 170 people. Thank you, folks, for taking time out of your day. About the budget is this administration, when I say this administration, I mean the board and I mean James, have done a very good job, I think, in this regard with the budget, which is that they haven't made cuts to areas where it doesn't give money back to the general fund. So this is something that for those of you that have been here for a long time, you may remember in the aftermath of the subprime mortgage crisis, The county was making cuts, and the philosophy was let's share it across all areas. And that oftentimes doesn't make sense because if you have a department like parks or the libraries or roads and airport funded by the gas tax, that has nothing to do with the general fund. So I could make a 50% cut to roads and airports, and it's not going to give any money back to the general fund. So that's also where we want to make sure that when the county is making cuts, it's making cuts in areas that are important and relevant for the fiscal health of the organization. Okay, so I'll pause here. If there are any questions or Mary Beth wish to add anything about the budget, please do. I think we've got a lot of questions in chat here, so I'm going to scroll down and look at some of those. Um, Anything, Mary?
I would just say that, looking at contracts, I did, I was responding to an email, so maybe I missed it, but if you, if you didn't mention contracts, if you're aware of contracts in your area that for services that are contracted out that could be brought back into the county, that is also something that I think that Zeb and the team would be interested in knowing.
Absolutely. And we really do want to look at contracts and non-people first, right? Like sometimes called object two, right? Object two expenses. Object one is salaries and benefits. Object two is stuff, I guess we can say. And we want to look at stuff before we're looking at people. So that's a great point. There are some individual messages too, so I know not everyone can see the full breadth of messages that have been sent. But the first item is an excellent one. He asks, would SEMA have any thoughts or comments on the proposed change to pensionable compensation limited limits for PEPRA? Yes, absolutely. So this is something, then this is specifically referring to Assembly Bill 1383. And what this proposes is to enhance the formulas for individuals, and this is something that SEMA has long been looking into, and we really want to see, in a nutshell, where we will be supportive of anything that reduces the pension age. So this becomes, and Mary, sorry, I'm not trying to put you on blast. If I remember correctly, you're PEPRA, is that correct? Okay. So our membership is now majority PEPRA. For those that don't remember what that means, anyone that was hired on or before January 1, 2013 is in a classic pension tier. Anyone who came on board after that and didn't work for a CalPERS reciprocal agency previously is called PEPRA. So we have classic employees and PEPRA employees. Classic, just plainly speaking, is a better tier, better system. So if you came in prior to that, you're on a better system. You get a higher percentage earlier in your career and can retire at 55. In order to achieve that same benefit, if you were hired under PEPRA, I believe you have to work until 64. So anything that advances that and is at a reasonable price, he is something that we would definitely be advocating for. That's correct, Patrick. Public Employee Pension Reform Act. That's abbreviation PEPRA. Look at that.
And Zeb, just to supplement on that, that the PEPA reform is one of SEMA's priorities. Looking at the legislative and supporting legislative reform for PEPRA.
Yep, absolutely. And that's part of a long-term goal that SEMA has. We really want to try to see that as Mary's pointing out, that PEPRA people are elevated because it's necessary, right? I mean, you need to have a pension that makes sense for your family budget, right? Um, and we don't like that inequity. And SEMA's done an excellent job of this. In all of our jurisdictions, every single one of them, we only have two pension tiers. If you have any friends that work in the city of San Jose, give them a holler. They've got six or seven, which is horrible, right? Each bargaining cycle, they create a new pension tier that just knives the new people coming in. A couple of comments here. We've got an individual saying that HR, TSS HR is an example of duplication. Why do we have a central HR and a departmental HR? Yeah, absolutely. That is a good example. And it's one where I was saying, how come there's not an HR internal service fund or enterprise fund? Because many departments might say I don't like how central HR is conducting business. Let's have our own. That has its own problems, but the responsiveness, why does it take 10 months to fill a position? Creates another position, another situation. Um, another member is saying, let me read this. Okay, an individual expressing concern. I'm not going to reveal them or their area, but that they were advocating, they feel like they've advocated for some group or position, and that there may be some executive retaliation as a result of that. That's absolutely something I never want to see or hear. And if you have more information about that, please let me know. You'll see in one of these uh, agenda items here was an area where we were able to push back against some of that. Okay, that is correct. And yes, so that's absolutely correct. And I did remove an item from the agenda because it wasn't ripe to be talked about now. So just if anyone's noticing that d difference between the what was mailed out and what we have here. Okay, Alfredo asks, what's SEMA's position role about executive scope with LR, particularly TSS? The bargaining units have been taking a majority of the cuts. Yeah, so that's part of the advocacy piece, and that's one of the reasons, Alfredo, why we've asked for the scope of executives. Um, I never like to be in a position where we're recommending that somebody else get cut. But when it comes to a situation where SEMA members might be cut, or we have to identify other cuts, we really want to look for those other cuts that, to my mind, make more sense to the organization as well as to delivering services. So no, it's not, it's certainly not too early to ask that question. Okay, so let's move on. Representational victory. I'm going to repost this in chat, and we've resolved the first one. And this is just a reminder for everybody. We had some really great people. If you're on the call, please identify yourselves or unmute or not. You don't have to mute, but just put in chat. We had a group come forward that I really appreciate the fact that you did come forward. And these were individuals in TSS that had two assignments. One involved the acquisition of RMC. So they were working excess hours. And I want to remind people that that's something that you can get compensation for, administrative time off or compensatory time. The other item that in this case warranted some feedback was that these individuals were assigned to what I call a non-social shift, where they were starting their work day at 11 p.m. and working into the next morning. I think their shift ended at 8 a.m. Now, perhaps confusingly, but for those of you that have supervised staff that work on the night before, and this is a lesson for us all, if someone's shift begins after 10, according to the SEMA contract, 10 p.m., so you could start at 10 p.m., 10:30, 11, 11:59, whatever it is, that counts as having worked the next day, right? So if I work a Sunday and my shift starts at 11 p.m., that's treated as though I'm working that Monday. And why that's relevant is that these individuals were assigned to work on 11 on a Sunday, and the next day was Cesar Chavez Day, which is a county holiday. So they should have gotten credit for working a county holiday, and were told, no, you are not eligible for holiday pay. So both issues had to be addressed, the excess hours concerning the RMC acquisition and being assigned to work on a holiday without compensatory time. Both were resolved, and I don't want to, maybe half a dozen people got those add backs. So this is just a reminder to you all, number one, how the late night shifts work and how you can get how it's treated as the next day. But then also, if you're a manager or even if you're someone working, maybe not a manager, to remind you that you are eligible to those add backs and you should be seeing those. And in this case, the management was on the same side as our members were, right? So we had IT managers saying, can we get these people paid? Like, what's the big holdup? And payroll was saying no, and some elements of executive administration were saying no. So happily we were, thank you so much, Gabe. Happily we were able to work with Gabe and his team and others on that group and with Amin and raise it to the highest level and just say, number one, you're wrong, because here's what the contract says. And number two, we'd really appreciate it if you would grant this time so we don't have to go to a grievance on it because here's the language, right? And so we were able to resolve that. And the reason that I'm highlighting it is not only for Gabe and his associates, so that we can take a victory lap on it, but as an educational piece for you all, so that you know if you find yourself in a like situation, that you'll have the union's backing to get that compensation. Or if you know as a manager, I need to get my people paid for on call, a shift differential because of some acquisition, a shift differential for a particular rollout, the union will back you on that. And we'll have that history. So thank you so much. Hopefully that's a little bit of knowledge for others and that's helpful to everybody. I've got a lot of let me see if some of these questions are relevant to this. Question about pepper reform. I can talk about that later. Um, Absolutely correct. This is just a comment I happen to agree to. The directors, I'm not going to name the person, are more focused on day-to-day managing of groups rather than strategic direction. I think that that's true. It's something that is a little bit unfortunate because the strategic elements of TSS are so critical for the long-term technological success of the county. And if we're not doing that and really concentrating on it's part of management. It's not silly. But if we're really worried about how many hours is someone in a chair, who's badging in, who's badging out, did you sign the security policy? Those are all important things. I'm not making light of that. But when we have bigger issues, right? Like, what's our AI policy? How are we cheapening without lowering the services that we provide, if that's even possible, right? Um, how are we not being a reactive TSS organization that's providing technology services to the county? How are we staying a step ahead? Those are really critical items that to my mind, there's not a very clear blueprint to. All right. Next item here is Save Our Hospitals, potential sales tax. So this again ties in with the budget, which is on the front, at least of my mind and so many of your board members' minds. What's happening right now is mostly the feds, but also the state, are cutting funding to safety net hospitals like our HHS system. It's not just Valley Med, all of our hospitals. Ourselves and the county of LA are the biggest impacted by this. So HR 1, or the so-called Big Beautiful Bill, Big Ugly Bill, whatever you want to call it, made a number of cuts to this. And much to our administration, or when I say our administration, I mean the executive, James Williams and company, disappointment, the state has piled on, the state of California has piled on rather than provide relief. So what that has done is it's made additional cuts to the reimbursement rates of Medicare, Medi-Cal, and our ability to get reimbursement funding for those services that we are providing. What that has done is it's created an estimated $1 billion hole in the budget. To put it in context, the county budget approved last cycle was just under $13 billion. But still, a billion out of 13 billion is a lot of money, right? That's a big cut. Represents about 7% of the budget. And that's a significant hit. It's not directly coming to TSS, but I hope everyone on this call appreciates that a lot of you service HHS, right, as a service line, as a vertical, right? And as HHS tries to balance its budget, it's going to be reducing not only its headcount, which reduces its billings to TSS, but it's probably going to be making cuts in its service level agreement as well as what features it needs and wants out of TSS. So again, we need to keep our eyes on that. And so that everyone is aware, on the most recent board meeting, the Board of Supervisors announced that it was putting on the ballot this so-called Save Our Hospitals. They're not calling it that. It's a 5/8 cent sales tax. And I have to be careful about how I word this. We'll be putting on the November 4th ballot, that's coming right up, a 5/8 cent sales tax. The purpose of that tax is to try to backfill some of this loss of revenue. On the one hand, we're losing an estimated $1 billion. On the other hand, this tax, 5/8 cent sales tax, will fill in a little more than $300 million of that if it passes. So you'll hear a lot more from SEMA about this, but do know that the Save Our Hospitals is something that is a sales tax that's going to be coming to us. It's something that SEMA is supportive of, and you'll be seeing a lot of opportunities from SEMA to support it, either through a phone campaign, letter campaign, actually walking, knocking on doors, talking to voters. This coming vote is going to be a low, it's estimated, I shouldn't say with certainty, is estimated to be a low turnout election. So we need 50% plus one in order to get this sales tax passed. And you'll see a lot more information coming out shortly about how we want to support that effort, and also mechanically what that effort looks like to you all. Nobody likes the tax, but in this case, the tax is going right to the county's bottom line, and it's a way for us to address some of these cuts. So hopefully it will, not hopefully, it will make more shallow the county's response to this budget hole. Okay, thank you, Patrick. You've posted something. I'm not sure what that is. It's a James Williams presentation. I'll look at that in a minute. Oh, yep, thank you. Great. Let me see if I've seen this one before. Great, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, any questions on Save Our Hospitals? If not, I'm going to go to IT Manager Series and Scope. All right, IT Manager Series. So a lot of you were around during the ITCC, and many of you were not. Information Technology Career Compass. That was the big study that studied all of the technology codes in the county, abolished a lot of them, consolidated a lot of them, and created a lot of new codes as well. The IT Manager Series is a critical leadership series of codes that was created. It's the IT Supervisor, IT Manager, Senior IT Manager, and Principal IT Manager. So why am I talking about this now? Why I'm mentioning it is that the IT Manager series was created and is being used to supervise technical codes. So what does that mean? Really, what it means is a code that was created during ITCC or has subsequently been created and housed in TSS. So, for example, I now this gets into like classifications and the appropriateness of classifications. I can 100% say it's inappropriate for an IT manager to be supervising janitorial staff. It's just a misuse of the position, right? We can all agree on that. Similarly, it'd be inappropriate for them to supervise fleet operations. Doesn't make any sense. Why would you use an IT code to do that? Now, I want to draw a distinction here between a an incidental supervision and pure supervision. An IT manager or someone in this series, when I say IT manager, I'm referring to the whole series, could quite appropriately supervise an office specialist or an admin. They could supervise a management analyst. What would be inappropriate is if an IT manager was exclusively supervising a clerical unit or management analysts, right? That doesn't jive. That's not what it should be doing. So why I'm mentioning this is it's a really horses for courses kind of situation where we're looking at the job specs, and this has nothing to do with individual personalities. I want to make that clear too. It has nothing to do with individual personalities. So it's not like I don't want Mary Beth Rogers supervising Zeb Feldman, so I'm kicking up a concern about that code supervising this. We just want the codes to be correct. And for the codes that are supervising folks outside of their area, SEMA always has the position of either stop doing that or reclassify the person who's doing it and compensate them for that scope. So I just wanted to make clear that that's something that has come to our attention, my attention specifically, and I want to make sure that the IT Manager series is operating within scope. And if you're not, if you find you're supervising a gaggle of nurses, if you find you're supervising, a large area that you don't think is appropriate, the way that the union can help you with that is you have to tell us, right? So please, if that's happening to you, let us know. Any questions on that about the IT manager? I see some. Let me look at these private messages. Again, folks, if it's not something I've got about a dozen private messages. If it doesn't need to be private, please share with the group so the group can read it and then we can help respond. Any chance of a reorg or annex TSS federated groups into TSS? So I'm not sure what I mean, I know what a reorg and an annexation is. I'm not sure what that means. So, for purposes of layoffs, the TSS, whether federated or not, is treated as all one unit. If you're suggesting like, will TSS directly be absorbing those federated departments? There's no discussion of that I've heard. Um, Maybe it's something we should talk about. Uh, the day-to-day operations. Let's see, what else do we have here? Okay, I've got. Oh, thank you. Bhagwan is saying, you made a good point earlier regarding the double cuts departments like TSS face. Hopefully, this is addressed in the days to come, and we don't have to constantly worry about our customer departments we serve facing budgeted. Absolutely right. And that's part of it, Bhagwan, is what we're really trying to emphasize is that there has to be that predictability, right? Because otherwise, you make a plan, even as a manager, you might be told, how can you trim 5% from your area? And you come up with a plan, and then all of a sudden the vertical that you're supporting cuts another 10%, right? So yeah, absolutely. It has to be nuanced. Okay, one more private message here. It looks like a major IT project is being removed to an outside third party. Okay, so that's a real concern. I'm going to respond back privately. That's something as well that's very useful for us to know. And I'll explain in just a second. Okay, so what this, and I'm not going to reveal this individual or what vertical they're talking about, but what they're talking about is they're talking about a vertical where TSS is being shown the road and a particular project is being reassigned to a third party, which to my mind means a vendor, right? A vendor or contractor. And TSS is not being tasked with that work. So why that's a big problem for us is basically you're taking county jobs and saying, hey, you guys go sit on the sidelines. I'm awarding this work to a non-county actor, and sad day for you all. You don't get to do that work. So that's something that absolutely we want to address because that's where we can um, insource projects or prevent it from being outsourced in the first place. Okay, let's see. That's the IT manager um, item. I'm putting the remainder in chat. Hey, survey, please take it. You all should have received earlier this week a survey, not in the SEMA voice, but in a standalone message about a space planning and alternate hours survey. It's going to be open until September 20th. So you have a little less than a month remaining to take it. And could I ask Mary Snow or Mary Beth to put the link to that survey in chat just so people have it? It should have come out Monday, let's say. Uh, and it's a survey for everyone, um, all county members. SEMA is currently meeting with the leadership team of the county, an executive, I call it task force. That probably sounds more official than it is. And what we're trying to do is look at campuses that can be closed and transitioned to alternate work hours. And what that may well look like is that a department or campus is closed, let's say, every other Friday. Tasman is closed. Let's just pick Tasman as an example. Okay, great. That means that then people are on an alternate work schedule at that time and the building is closed. Doesn't mean you can't get access, but it means that it's closed to the public. The benefit of this, of those alternate work hours, is that then for the days that you're public or client facing, in TSS's case, you have expanded work hours, right? So if I have a 410, that, which is 4 days a week, 10 hours a day, it means that I now, thank you so much, Mary. It means that I now am able to provide services to the public. Let's pretend previously I was doing it from 9 to 5. Now I can do it from 8 to 6, which gives, like, say, for example, DTAC or a public facing entity like social services. It means that I can now have my front counter open for more hours so people can come before or after work to access those services. So that's something that we're really looking at carefully with and closely with the county, and we want to see what your preferences are about that. So as you go through the survey, you'll see things like, oh, do you prefer a 410? Do you prefer a 980? Would you trade a 410 for for example, remote work? Would you rather see expanded remote work? So all of these are tailored to try to understand what departments, campuses, and then operational units make sense for alternate hours, and if it's even popular, right? So if it's not gonna, this won't be the result, but pretend we take the survey and the result is 100% of the 500 SEMA respondents say they have no interest in alternate hours. Well, our marching orders are clear, right? We're not going down this path, right? I'd be very surprised if it's that, but the granularity of the questionnaire will be like, wow, 90% of people working at Charcot want a 410. Wow. I wonder what's going on over at Charcot that it's so high. So that's where we're really looking for with the survey. Mary, thanks so much for putting it in chat. Please do take that. It should only take you 2, 3 minutes to fill out, and that's where we're taking our direction from on that topic. Thank you. Okay, we've got, where are we now? We have food poisoning. Oh, well, wasn't expecting to. This one just came up yesterday, so it's hot off the press. And I want to just use it as, again, kind of like that advocacy piece where we got that victory. This is not it's still an advocacy piece, but not a victory. It's one where I want to just use it as a learning opportunity. So we all know, probably, unfortunately, probably most of us have experienced food poisoning at some point in our life. What is happening in this circumstance is an investigation is underway looking into the sale of food and uh, on campus, right? In the workplace. And so what happened in this circumstance is, and because lots of people on this call are supervisors, if you are supervising individuals, you're the manager of an individual, and you know that every Friday is Hot Tamale Friday, and Zeb rolls in and I've got my steam tray of the hot tamales I made at home, or in my case, matzo ball soup or whatever it is, and I'm selling it, and you know I'm selling it. I better have a license. I better have everything ticked, right? That I have a food preparer's certification license, that I have some kind of a business, that my kitchen has been, all the regs have been met, right? Otherwise, we're going to be in trouble. Now, it's a completely different thing if, lots of departments do this. They'll say, we're having a potluck next month, and everyone brings something. That's very different than if I have Zeb's matzo soup Wednesday. That's a very different thing. And you know that if you give me $10, I'll bring you a hot jar of matzo ball soup. That's a very different thing than there's a retirement potluck for Zeb. Everyone bring something, and you can bring, a bag of Doritos, or you can bring, your homemade cookies or whatever it is. The transaction is where the focus is on this. So what happened is, I see some more questions in chat. I'll turn to those in a moment. What happened is, for a long period of time, several individuals have been selling their homemade food to their colleagues. And it's to the point of like you would people would put in an order, right? They'd say, I've got a big barbecue this Saturday. Can you make these 5 items? Here's 300 bucks, or whatever it is. And in this case, I've represented a manager and a supervisor who have been called in about what they've known for how long and when. And what ended up happening is not that anyone was complaining about the food sales, it's that a bunch of people put in orders and got food poisoning. And so now it's a problem, right? Because they're coming forward with their complaints saying, how come I'm being, no one protected me? I got this food poisoning and no one protected me. I'm gonna use a better angels argument right here. I don't even think the complaint originated with someone coming forward and saying, I want to make a complaint about this person who sold me food. What happened is several people all in the same unit called in sick and volunteered that they had food poisoning from something they bought at work. And that led to questions and then ultimately a complaint. So if you know about anything like this, just be sure to uh, admonish the individual. Admonish is just remind people you can't be
But you're talking about the 15th through 26th,
you have to do it
right?
appropriately.
Okay, I'll put it on my calendar.
I'm gonna mute all. Someone's unmuted here.
October. Oh,
Okay. Um, do be appropriate with enforcing the regulations. Nobody likes to be an enforcer, but in this circumstance, you've just got to be diligent and so no one gets poisoned. You don't get complaints. You're not the one that I'm having to represent because you know that it's matzo ball soup Friday and Zeb's making 500 bucks selling his matzo ball soup to a bunch of people and then a bunch of people get sick. So keep yourself informed. Do what you can to prevent these kinds of things, and then you'll spare yourself these kinds of investigations and hopefully avoid any kind of further food poisoning and so forth. Okay, I'm going to turn to a couple of questions here. We've got upcoming PD events and rights about excess hours, but let me put that in chat, and then I've got a couple of questions in chat here. Let's see. Let me go to the first one. Rosanna asks, can you clarify your comment on IT managers managing nursing? Are you specifically talking about nurse coordinators for TSS under HealthLink? No, not specifically, Rosanna. I was referring to it as an appropriateness. So it may be appropriate for an IT manager to supervise one IT or technical nurse or several nurses. I would regard it as inappropriate if an IT manager was just supervising a nursing unit, right? Even if you had 100% nurses, it just wouldn't be appropriate to my mind. It was a broad reference. Similarly, I said if an IT manager was supervising a janitorial unit. So it wasn't meant to specifically target HealthLink or Epic HealthLink individuals. So I hope that clarifies that. Walter asks, would 410 mean 1 day of work from home? Unknown. So this is in reference to that survey I was talking about. A 410 schedule means you work 4 days a week, 10 hours a day. So that would be independent of whether or not you are also remote working. So theoretically, I could be on a 410 schedule, meaning I'm working 10 hours a day. Let's just pretend I'm off on Fridays for purposes of this conversation. So I'm working 10 hours a day and I'm off on Fridays, meaning I don't even go to work. It's not that I'm working from home on Fridays. Monday through Thursday, I'm working. Now, in addition to it being a 410, I very conceivably could have Tuesday as a remote work day. Let's just say for this conversation. So Monday I come into the office, Tuesday I'm working from home, Wednesday I come into the office, Thursday I come into the office, I've met my 40 hours. Friday is mine. I'm doing whatever I want to do Friday, but I'm not remote working on that Friday. So hopefully that clarifies. It's not an either or. Okay, I've got a bunch of again a lot of private ones. Let me see here. When in this great question, in this circumstance, when I'm talking about IT supervisors, when I'm discussing technical codes, I'm talking about information technology related codes or adjacent codes that were created as a result of ITCC. So an example of kind of like a code that I might have a question mark from if I didn't know the history of ITCC might be the strategic sourcing specialists, as an example. IT strategic sourcing specialists. I might say, well, this is a procurement code. Yes, but it's created specifically for IT purposes. Um, and then anything that has to do directly with IT. So, yep, absolutely great question. And yes, it is related to IT codes. Okay. There's a request to have federated groups added to TSS. Yeah, just this is a great question because a lot of people don't know about this. Is SEMA accepting contract discussions and priorities now? Will there be surveys to see what SEMA members are interested in when contract negotiations arise? Always. So, Mary, both Mary and Mary Beth. Mary, you sat on the contract. Can you talk about our bargaining surveys and what? Also, I noticed we're joined by Jim. If Jim wants to talk on this as well, he was on the bargaining team. But could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So we frequently send out surveys to the membership so we can better understand what your priorities are. So typically we'll list out things are your priorities around salary increases? Is it medical? Is it alternative work schedule? So it's just a way for us to get feedback so that we can properly represent of all of our membership in the negotiations.
And I'm going to say for myself, I hope Mary and Jim would agree. We take very seriously what the feedback is from the members. And when I say very seriously, I mean when we're drawing up proposals, there were a number of occasions in the bargaining room where our caucus room where we have displayed the survey at the same time. Right? We're like, how does this contract language overlap with what our members are asking us to do? So this isn't just some like, we're taking a survey so we can have some fig leaf claim of like listening to the membership. This is
Yep.
where the bargaining team members have very seriously taken it, and I take it very seriously. What did Jim? I heard a male voice. Was that Jim unmuting? Guess not. Okay. I saw him join. I don't know if he's still on. Okay. So yeah, we will be doing that and taking that seriously. And if you have suggestions for SEMA positions, let us know whether it's bargaining season or not. Right. Okay. A couple more questions. Walter mentions 3 days of work in office, 410. Also 3 days of work in office. Walter, probably would be my answer. I don't know because the remote work is subject to your specific manager approving it. So if there's a department-wide policy, and this is where there's a lot of gray area, the COO, this is Greta Hanson's email govern from a long time ago, this is like 2 years ago now, governing remote work. If you have a special assignment, your manager can make an exception and have you have more remote work than what is typical. So broadly speaking, I would expect the same amount of days in office to persist. So I think your estimate there is correct, Walter. Um, Trin Young, hey Trin, have been a long time. If countywide layoff happens, can an SEIU employee bump a SEMA employee based on county seniority? That is a surprisingly complicated answer. The simple answer is going to be no, but, and here's the big but. Okay, bumping is the colloquial term for displacement in our contract. So let's pretend there's someone that has greater seniority. An SEIU member has 15 years of seniority and you only have 10. Can an SEIU member bump you? My normal answer is no, and let me explain why. The only way that someone can bump you is when they are returning to their former class. So an SEIU member with more seniority to you would have to have held your specific position in order to be able to bump you, which is very unusual because usually people in their career, they go up a salary ladder, right? Not always, but not always is that true. And there is a theoretical circumstance where an SEIU member, pretend I was a low voltage cable installer. And then I promoted to be a BRM, business relationship manager. And then I went back to being a low voltage cable installer for whatever reason, right? And now I have my 15 years of seniority and I'm laid off as a low voltage cable installer. There's a different title for that, but there's a code that I'm referring to. I can't remember what it's called. These are the folks that are installing Cat 7 and running low voltage things throughout the county. Now, in that circumstance, if I'm laid off, I can in place, displace, and bump into my previously held code of business relationship manager, which is a SEMA code. That's an incredibly rare circumstance. What's far more likely is a BRM would get laid off and displace or bump into a voltage installer code, right? So I hope that answers your question, Trin. It's a very niche circumstance where that individual would have to, one, have greater seniority, and two, have previously held a SEMA code. So it's a theoretical possibility, but very unlikely. Okay. Let me know if that answered your question,
Oh,
please.
so yeah, yeah, the infinite license, the perpetual. That's what it's mentioning.
Sorry, could you repeat that, Abel?
Yeah, I'm gonna leave.
Maybe that wasn't addressed to us. Okay, I'm muting everybody again. A lot of people keep unmuting themselves for reasons I don't understand and then talking. So, okay. Um, Sani asks, excuse me, Neelam asks, TSS currently allows hybrid or alternate work schedules, not both. Thank you. That's very helpful to know, Neelam. Something that as a result of whatever our negotiations are with the county, with this potential, alternate work schedule for a particular site. If that were to happen, I would be very surprised from the survey results if people said, I want to trade my remote work for an alternate work schedule. I think what most people would want is what Walter was suggesting, which is, hey, I'd love to have both. Can I have an alternate work schedule and remote work? Right. So I suspect that the only way that that would be popular is if we were able to negotiate something new where we would have both, or it's never a problem. To my mind, it's never a problem if someone has options, right? Would you rather work a 410? If you want to, you can. Where it becomes a problem for me and probably for you is if I force someone into a 410 or 980 and then they have to give up their remote work. I would suspect people would not want that kind of trade. So what we're looking at much more likely is here's another option. Is this an option you want to avail yourself to? Okay, I think we have one agenda item left. Upcoming PD event and your rights about excess hours. So this is the final item, and they are linked. So we have an upcoming PD event that is beyond this next one, but it's where we're going to be discussing PD's professional development, by the way, and a lot of you have attended these professional development events. This one is going to be a virtual one. It is where we'll have a guest speaker, Paul Lorenz, who will be speaking about the impacts to the budget for the health and hospital system. So because of those ripple effects, I expect there will be a lot of interest. But he's not going to be speaking the whole time. Some of your business reps are going to be talking to you, and we should have one or two board of supervisors in attendance. We're going to be talking about impacts to the budget, some of your budget rights, and particularly your rights about excess hours. So a lot of people may not know that Section 1.5 of our contract says that if you are routinely working more than 40 hours, you should reach out to your business rep. And you don't have to reach out. You're entitled to a meeting with your manager and director to discuss reducing your workload to be a more typical 40-hour work week. So that's a feature of the contract. It's something that I'm learning, not that many people are aware of. So please, if that's something that's routinely applying to you, let us know so we can have those conversations between you and your executive. Obviously, number one, you have to mind that you're working the excess hours, or else there's not a reason to bring it up. And number two, it has to be consistent and ongoing. So, and if you call me, that's something I will make very clear to you. If you say, last week I had to work 60 hours because it was fiscal year close and it was a real bummer. Okay, how much did you work the week before? 40. And the week before that, 38. The week before that, 43. Okay, well, I'm sad that you had to work 60 hours that week, but that's not something where we're going to be able to make real changes to your workload. It's when you're consistently working more, I'll meet with you, we'll make presentations to the boss and say, I'd like to have A, B, and C removed from my plate, and the boss can say, right on. Or they could say, no, we're not. Then we say, okay, you come up with a solution. I have a documented excess hours of whatever it is, 60 hours a week for the last 5 months. How are you going to reduce this? And that's where executives are obligated to come up with a plan. Okay, so that should be a really great PD event, and we are right at time. So let me see, answer a couple questions. I'll stay on. There are some individual ones. Share. Okay, so this is a great question. Why is it that people are still allowed to transfer to higher positions or take promotions while others have been laid off? So that's a great question, and it's one that may appear unfair. The reason being that the county still has positions at a higher level, at a higher pay level, when I say higher level, and it still needs to fill those positions. So while we may have it, let's go back to my earlier example, which I think is non-controversial. Pretend the county says, I'm getting out of the bookmobile business. Well, I've got two librarians assigned to the bookmobile. I just don't need them anymore. Bye, right? Bookmobile librarians are out. That doesn't mean that I don't need a nurse for the emergency room or that I don't need a food inspector, right? That might be paying more than that bookmobile position. So different areas of the county can be cut or laid off while at the same time vacancies or what the county is articulating as an essential position are filled. So I hope that folks can wrap their minds around that. And it does seem inequitable, right? Because it's like, how come I got laid off but they're hiring that highly paid position still? Okay, a couple other questions in chat. That's something I'm going to really want to talk about because I did not realize that. Can people give me some more feedback on this? Someone's PMing, private messaging me saying that they are no longer able to make remote work exceptions. That's not my understanding, and we don't, but I mean, obviously, this person knows what they're allowed to do. Is that correct across all verticals in TSS? It's a question to the group. Yeah, that's inappropriate. I'm just mentioning that, and I am working on it. Okay. A couple people are PMing me, yes, that they are not able to make those exemptions. And people are putting that in chat. So, Patrick, an exemption might be like, I think you're allowed, am I correct that you're allowed 2 days of telework per week? Is that right, Mary Snow or others?
Yes, 2 days a week, just not a Monday and a Friday at the same.
Okay. So an exception would be, for example, Zeb's working on a billing project for the hospital for the next 3 months and can do that 100% remote. He only needs to come in for staff meetings. And then as an IT manager, you can say, Zeb, I grant you an exception to the normal 2 day remote work. Come in, I need you to come in on the 25th, the 30th, and the whatever for the monthly staff meetings over the next 3 months. Other than that, you're remote. That's an example of an exemption. Is that an exemption or exception that you're allowed to be made? And I'm hearing some people say no, they can't make that.
I didn't know that it was only at director level, but I thought it was at a manager level where you could have an exemption. If somebody is, let's just say they come down with COVID and you allow them to work from home.
Okay. Yeah, that's my understanding, but I'll get clarity on that at our next labor management meeting. Hey, Susan, yeah, absolutely. We can send it out earlier. Just so everyone knows, this meeting, that everyone here should have a calendar invite for this meeting as a standing meeting. So it occurs um, the it's always the fourth Friday of the month. I'll have a new calendar. Let me write this down. I'll have a new calendar invite sent out again to everybody. But yeah, the agenda is just designed to be a reminder. It's not designed to be like an invite to the meeting. Go ahead, Mary.
Zeb, if they go into the SEMA website and look on the calendar, is there a way to click on the item in our calendar and get that posted on their own calendar?
I do not know.
Because yeah, I mean, because as folks join or SEMA, that might be useful too. I don't know if that's a function that has though. So.
Yeah, I'll have to check it out. I don't know that. Let me add that to my, because I populate. Usually I'm the one inviting, so it's different, right? But yeah, let me see if I can. If that could be clickable on the website.
Because I mean, I know you can go into the website, click on the calendar, copy what's there,
Mhm.
control C, copy what's there, and then add it to your own calendar, kind of the manual way. But it'd be really cool if you could just click on it and have it add it to your calendar kind of more automatically.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you, Joel, for that. And we are at the end of our time now. Gabe, yes. So the IT manager, or excuse me, the IT labor management meeting is an open meeting. So what I mean by that is anyone is welcome to attend, but it's not one that I have sent like an invite, for example, to all 180 of you, or how I think we had 190 at the height here today, where I just broadcast it out. Something that I could do, I mean, I could do that. I just wouldn't want to have 180 people show up. Um, and the reason that I don't is that right now, SEMA does not require release time for any meetings. And Mary Beth can appreciate this. In her department, we're flirting with the county, probably introducing language in our next contract saying we might need to start doing release time because whenever we have a meet and confer in that area, there's a lot of members present. Which is a good thing. I like member engagement, but from an employer perspective, they're like, how come no one's working during this 1 hour meeting when I've got to meet with the union, you know? But yeah, it's an open meeting. So I'll send that out, and then if we'll see, what I'll do is I'll start with a broad invite, Gabe, and then see how many people show up, and then if we get an unreasonable number, then I might have to pull that back a little bit. But yeah, it's not unclosed at all. Okay. And I've gotten several anonymous questions that I'm copying into my agenda here, just so I can follow up. And that's very helpful because now I know that there is no exemption. Okay. So this is an individual saying that they've been directly told that there is no exemption. Yeah, so this is definitely going to have to be brought up at the next meeting. And then of course the TSS Federation issue. Um, Great. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for I think a very great meeting and discussion. I learned a lot, and I hope it was valuable for you all. to hear some of the updates. And yes, everyone will be invited to the next labor management meeting with the county. And when I say invited, what will happen is an email will go out noticing you of when the meeting is with a Teams link. So it's not going to be a calendar invite, but it'll just be a Teams link where you can join if you wish. And the reason it's Teams rather than Zoom, of course, is that the county prefers to use Teams. Okay, thank you, everybody. I really appreciate you spending time out of your busy day to join us, and have a beautiful morning. And I'll see Mary and Mary Beth and Jim shortly for our board meeting.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.